The morning sun cast long shadows across the grounds of Windsor Castle as Prince William adjusted his navy blazer one final time. His hands trembled slightly, a rare display of nerves from someone who had faced countless royal duties with unwavering composure. Today was different. Today would test every fiber of his royal training and personal strength. Kate Middleton, now the Princess of Wales, stood beside him in the private drawing room, her elegant cream dress carefully chosen for its understated dignity. She reached for William's hand, their fingers intertwining in a gesture that had become second nature over their years of marriage. Yet today, even this simple touch carried extraordinary weight. "Are you ready?" she whispered, her voice barely audible above the distant sounds of preparation echoing through the castle corridors. William nodded, though the tightness in his throat made speaking difficult. Outside, hundreds of people were gathering, their faces filled with hope and expectation. They had no idea what was about to unfold, no understanding of the personal struggle that had brought the royal couple to this moment. The letter had arrived 3 weeks earlier, delivered by special courier to their private residence at Adelaide Cottage. The envelope bore no return address, just elegant handwriting that immediately caught Kate's attention. She had opened it, while William was away on official duties, never expecting that its contents would change everything. Inside was a photograph yellowed with age, showing a young woman holding a baby. The woman's smile was radiant, her eyes sparkling with joy and love. But it was the note attached that made Kate's heart skip a beat. The handwriting was shaky, clearly from someone elderly, and the words were simple yet profound. "Your Royal Highness, I am writing to you because I have nowhere else to turn. This photograph is of my daughter Sarah, holding her son Jamie 35 years ago. Sarah died in a car accident when Jamie was just 2 years old. I raised him as my own, but I am 93 now and my time is running short. Jamie has special needs and has lived in care facilities for the past 5 years since I could no longer manage. He speaks of the royal family every day, particularly of you and Prince William. His dream is to meet you both, just once, before I am gone. I know this is an impossible request, but a grandmother's love makes her try impossible things." The letter was signed by Eleanor Matthews and included her address in a small village just outside London. Kate had read the letter 3 times before the tears began to fall. She immediately thought of her own children, of George, Charlotte, and Louis, and how devastating it would be if anything happened to separate them from their family. When William returned that evening, Kate was waiting in their sitting room, the letter spread across the coffee table beside the photograph. She watched as he read it, saw the exact moment when the weight of Eleanor's words hit him. His jaw tightened, and he set the letter down with extraordinary care. "We have to help them," Kate had said quietly, and William nodded without hesitation. What followed were 3 weeks of careful planning, coordinated in absolute secrecy. Royal protection officers conducted security assessments, private secretaries made discreet inquiries, and medical professionals were consulted to ensure they could provide the best possible experience for Jamie, whose autism and cognitive delays made new situations particularly challenging. Eleanor Matthews proved to be exactly as her letter suggested, a remarkable woman whose strength had been tested by unimaginable loss, but who had never given up on her grandson. During a private phone call, she had broken down while describing Jamie's daily routine of looking through magazines featuring the royal family, his innocent questions about whether the prince and princess might visit him someday. The plan they developed was extraordinary in its simplicity and humanity. Rather than a formal palace meeting with all its intimidating protocol, William and Kate decided to visit Jamie in his care facility. They would spend an afternoon with him, bringing gifts and treats and, most importantly, bringing the genuine warmth and attention that Eleanor had described as her grandson's greatest wish. Now standing in the Windsor Castle drawing room, both William and Kate felt the magnitude of what they were about to do. This wasn't a state visit or ceremonial duty. This was 2 people, who happened to be royals, reaching out to touch one, life in a way that might seem small to the outside world, but would mean everything to a young man with special needs and his devoted grandmother. Kate squeezed William's hand again, drawing strength from their connection. They had discussed extensively how to approach the visit, consulting with specialists who worked with individuals with autism. They learned about Jamie's interests, his favorite foods, his routine, and most importantly, his personality. Eleanor had described him as gentle and loving, with an infectious laugh and an amazing memory for details about people he cared about. The car was waiting outside, unmarked and understated. Their protection team had already secured the route and the facility. In less than an hour, they would walk into the sunny community room where Jamie spent his days, and they would try to give him something magical. As they walked toward the door, Kate felt tears threatening to spill over. She thought about the photograph of Sarah holding baby Jamie, about Eleanor's 93 years of love and sacrifice, about the simple human desire to bring joy to someone who asked for so little. William paused at the threshold, his own eyes bright with unshed tears. "You know," he said softly, "this is why we do this. Not for the ceremonies or the state dinners, but for moments like this." Kate smiled, understanding exactly what he meant. In all their years of royal duty, nothing had felt more important than this quiet afternoon visit to a young man who simply wanted to meet his heroes. They stepped outside together, ready to create a moment of pure joy that would ripple far beyond anything they could imagine. The Sunrise Care community looked nothing like the grand palaces and historic buildings where William and Kate usually conducted their royal duties. Set in a quiet residential area, the modern facility was designed to feel like home rather than an institution. Large windows filled the spaces with natural light, and cheerful artwork created by residents decorated the walls. Eleanor Matthews had arrived early that morning, her weathered hands clutching a small bouquet of daffodils from her garden. At 93, she moved slowly but with purpose, her eyes bright with anticipation and anxiety. The staff had prepared Jamie as best they could, explaining that some very special visitors were coming to see him, but they hadn't revealed exactly who those visitors would be. Jamie himself sat in his favorite armchair in the main common room, wearing his best shirt, a blue button-down that Eleanor had bought him for Christmas. His collection of royal magazines and newspaper clippings were spread on the table beside him, as they were every day. At 37 years old, Jamie had the enthusiastic spirit of someone much younger, and his face lit up whenever he talked about his fascination with the royal family. "The prince has 3 children," he had told the care staff that morning, carefully pointing to photographs. "George is the oldest, then Charlotte, then Louis. Charlotte is the only girl, like my mum was the only girl in her family." His memory for royal facts was extraordinary, a detail that Eleanor had mentioned in her letter and that had particularly touched Kate's heart. The facility director, Margaret Chen, checked her watch nervously. She had worked in care management for over 20 years, but nothing had prepared her for this day. When the initial call had come from Kensington Palace, she had thought it was a prank. The subsequent security assessments and careful planning had convinced her it was real, but the magnitude of what was happening still felt surreal. Other residents moved about their daily routines, unaware of the extraordinary visit about to take place. The staff had been sworn to secrecy, and only Margaret and 2 senior caregivers knew the full details of what was planned. Everyone else simply knew that Jamie was having special visitors and that the afternoon would be different from usual. When the unmarked cars pulled up outside at precisely 2 o'clock, Margaret felt her heart rate increase dramatically. She watched through the window as William and Kate emerged, both looking more nervous than she had ever seen them appear in any public setting. They were dressed casually, William in dark trousers and a sweater, Kate in a simple dress and cardigan, clearly having made an effort to appear as approachable and unthreatening as possible. Their protection officers established a discreet perimeter while William and Kate approached the main entrance. Margaret met them there, her professional composure barely containing her excitement. "Your Royal Highnesses," she began, but Kate interrupted gently. "Please. Today we're just William. And Kate, we're here as friends." Margaret led them through the bright corridors, explaining in hushed tones how they had prepared Jamie for the visit. "He knows someone special is coming to see him, and he's been very excited. We thought it best not to tell him exactly who, as he might become overwhelmed with anticipation." As they approached the common room, They could hear Jamie's voice engaged in animated conversation with Eleanor. He was describing in remarkable detail a recent documentary he had watched about the royal gardens at Highgrove. He remembers everything, Eleanor was saying fondly. Every detail about every program he's ever seen about the royal family. It's quite remarkable. William and Kate exchanged a look of wonder and slight intimidation. They were accustomed to meeting people who knew facts about their public lives, but Jamie's level of detailed interest was extraordinary. Margaret paused at the doorway. "Are you ready?" Kate took a deep breath, her eyes already beginning to mist. The weight of the moment, knowing how much this would mean to Jamie and Eleanor, was overwhelming in the most beautiful way. "We're ready," William said quietly, though his voice betrayed his emotion. Margaret stepped into the room first. "Jamie, your special visitors have arrived." Jamie looked up from his magazines with bright curiosity, and Eleanor rose slowly from her chair, her hands trembling slightly with age and anticipation. When William and Kate appeared in the doorway, the room fell completely silent. Jamie's expression went through several rapid changes: confusion, recognition, disbelief, and then pure, radiant joy. His mouth opened in amazement and his hands flew to his face in a gesture of wonder that was both childlike and deeply moving. "Is it really?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Eleanor's eyes filled with tears immediately. She had dreamed of this moment, hoped for it, prayed for it, but seeing it actually happen was more overwhelming than she had imagined possible. Kate stepped forward first, her own emotional composure wavering as she saw the pure happiness on Jamie's face. "Hello, Jamie," she said softly. "I'm Catherine, but you can call me Kate. This is my husband, William. We've heard so much about you from your grandmother." Jamie's face broke into the widest smile anyone in the room had ever seen. He looked back and forth between his visitors and Eleanor, as if checking to make sure this was really happening and not one of the dreams he sometimes had about meeting the royal family. "You're really here," he said wonderingly. "In my place. The prince and princess are in my place." William moved closer, his own eyes bright with unshed tears. "We wouldn't want to be anywhere else today, Jamie. Your grandmother told us how much you enjoy learning about our family and we wanted to meet you." The simple humanity of the moment was overwhelming. Here was no ceremony, no protocol, no formal speeches, just two people reaching out to touch the life of someone who had found joy and fascination in following their story from afar. Jamie looked down at his collection of magazines and clippings, suddenly self-conscious. "I know lots about you," he said shyly. "I know about your children and your houses and your work. Is that okay?" Kate felt tears spill over as she heard the uncertainty in his voice, as if his innocent interest might somehow be inappropriate. She moved to sit beside him, speaking gently. "It's more than okay, Jamie. It's wonderful that you're interested in what we do. Would you like to tell us some of the things you know? We'd love to hear." What happened next would remain etched in everyone's memory forever. Jamie's initial shock gave way to an explosion of joy and enthusiasm that filled the entire room with warmth. He began sharing his extensive knowledge about William and Kate's lives with the innocent excitement of someone who had finally found the perfect audience for his passion. "You got married on April 29th, 2011, Jamie began, his voice growing stronger with confidence. "Kate wore a dress made by Sarah Burton, and millions of people watched on television. I watched it here with Grandma Eleanor when I was younger. She made special sandwiches for the occasion." Eleanor wiped tears from her eyes as she remembered that day. Jamie had been so excited about the royal wedding that they had created their own little celebration in his care facility. He had worn his best clothes and insisted on using the good china. Kate leaned forward, genuinely fascinated by Jamie's detailed recollections. "You remember all of that? That's incredible, Jamie. It was such a special day for us." "And Prince George was born on July 22nd, 2013, Jamie continued, warming to his subject. "Then Princess Charlotte on May 2nd, 2015, and Prince Louis on April 23rd, 2018. George will be king someday, like his daddy will be king after Grandpa Charles." William found himself smiling despite the tears threatening to spill over. You know, more about our family timeline than some of our official biographers, Jamie. That's really impressive. Jamie beamed at the praise, then grew more serious. I know sad things too. I know about Princess Diana, your mummy who died when you were young like my mummy died when I was young. Grandma Eleanor says that's why I understand you, because we both lost our mummies early. The room fell silent at this profound observation. William felt his composure crack completely. Here was someone who, despite his cognitive challenges, had grasped an emotional truth that connected them in a way that no formal introduction or briefing could have prepared him for. You're absolutely right, Jamie, William said, his voice thick with emotion. We do understand each other in that way. It's something that makes us special even though it's sad. Eleanor spoke up from her chair, her voice trembling. Jamie often talks about how the prince must feel, losing his mother, so young. He has such empathy, even though people sometimes don't recognize it because of his condition. Kate turned to Eleanor, struck by the depth of understanding this grandmother had about her grandson's unique perspective. He clearly gets that empathy. From you, Eleanor. The love and care you've given him shines through everything he says and does. Jamie suddenly stood up, moving to a small bookshelf in the corner of the room. He returned with a worn photo album, handling it with the careful reverence of someone who treasured its contents. These are pictures of my mummy, he said, opening to the first page. Grandma Eleanor made this book for me so I could remember her. This is us when I was a baby. The photograph was the same one Eleanor had included with her letter, a young woman with Jamie's same gentle eyes, holding him with obvious love and pride. But there were others too. Sarah helping toddler Jamie blow out birthday candles, pushing him on a swing, reading him stories. William and Kate looked through the album, with Jamie, asking questions about each photo and listening as he shared his memories. His recall of details was remarkable. He remembered the names of toys, the colors of clothes, even what his mother had said to him in various situations. She used to sing to me, Jamie said softly, turning to a picture of Sarah with a guitar. Grandma Eleanor says I have her voice, but I'm too shy to sing for people usually. Kate felt her heart break and soar simultaneously. Would you sing something for us, Jamie? Only if you want to. We would love to hear your mother's voice through you. Jamie looked uncertain, glancing at Eleanor for encouragement. His grandmother nodded with tears streaming down her cheeks. In a voice that was gentle and surprisingly melodic, Jamie began to sing, You Are My Sunshine. The simple children's song filled the room with such pure emotion that no one could maintain their composure. William covered his face with his hands, overwhelmed by the beauty and sadness of the moment. When Jamie finished, Kate stood and wrapped him in a hug that was both spontaneous and deeply felt. That was beautiful, Jamie. Thank you for sharing something so special with us. Jamie hugged her back with the unself-conscious affection of someone who had never learned to hide his emotions. I don't usually hug people I don't know well, but you feel like family, he said simply. The profound truth of his statement hit everyone in the room. This wasn't about royal protocol or official duties. This was about human connection at its most basic and beautiful level. William joined the embrace, creating a moment that the care facility staff would later describe as transformative. Seeing their usually reserved resident so comfortable and happy with these visitors was remarkable, but seeing the obvious genuine emotion from the prince and princess was equally moving. Jamie, William said, stepping back but keeping his hands on Jamie's shoulders. We brought some things for you. Would you like to see them? Jamie's eyes lit up with childlike excitement. Presents? Real presents from the real prince and princess? Kate retrieved a carefully wrapped package from her bag. Inside were several items chosen specifically with Jamie's interests in mind. A personal photograph of the royal family signed by all 5 members, a book about the history of the royal residences, and most specially, a small pin badge that had belonged to Princess Diana. Jamie held the pin with trembling hands, understanding immediately what it was. This was your mummy's? He whispered to William. It was one of her favorites, William confirmed. I thought you might like to have something that connected all three of us. You, me, and our mothers who are watching over us. The weight of this gift was not lost on anyone in the room. Eleanor began crying openly, overwhelmed by the generosity and thoughtfulness of the gesture. But Jamie surprised everyone with his response. Instead of keeping the pin, he walked over to Eleanor and carefully pinned it to her cardigan. "You should wear it, Grandma Eleanor," he said seriously. "You're like a mummy to me now, and Princess Diana would want other mummies to have her special things." In that moment, everyone in the room understood that they were witnessing something extraordinary. Not just royal generosity, but the pure wisdom and love of someone who saw the world with perfect clarity, despite the challenges he faced. As the afternoon progressed, what had begun as a formal royal visit transformed into something much more intimate and meaningful. Jamie's natural curiosity and genuine warmth broke down every barrier, creating an atmosphere where titles and protocols seemed irrelevant. The common room of the care facility became a space where four people simply shared their humanity with each other. Eleanor watched from her chair as William and Kate settled onto the floor beside Jamie, looking through his extensive collection of royal memorabilia. Her heart swelled with gratitude and disbelief. For 5 years she had watched her grandson in this care facility, adapting to a life she had never imagined for him. The guilt of not being able to care for him herself at her age had been crushing, but seeing him now, radiant with happiness, she felt a peace she hadn't experienced in years. "Tell us about your typical day here, Jamie," Kate asked, genuinely interested in understanding his routine and lifestyle. Jamie's face brightened as he began describing his daily activities with the enthusiasm of someone who found joy in simple pleasures. "I wake up at 7:30 every morning and Mrs. Chen makes sure I have my proper breakfast. I like porridge with honey, just like Grandma Eleanor used to make me. Then I do my exercises with Sarah. She's my physiotherapist and she's very nice." He paused to point out Sarah, who was discreetly observing from across the room, her own eyes filled with tears at witnessing this extraordinary interaction. "After exercises, I usually read my royal magazines or work on my puzzles. I'm very good at puzzles. I can do 1,000-piece ones now. In the afternoon, we sometimes go for walks in the garden or we have music time. I like music time because I can sing like Mummy used to." William listened with rapt attention, struck by how Jamie had created a meaningful life within the structure of the care facility. "It sounds like you have wonderful people taking care of you here, Jamie. That makes me happy to know." "They are wonderful," Jamie agreed earnestly. "But I miss Grandma Eleanor every day. I understand why I can't live with her anymore because she's very old and needs care too. But I still miss our little house and our garden with the roses." Eleanor's voice broke as she spoke. "I miss it too, my darling boy. More than you know." The pain in the room was palpable but somehow healing. Kate moved closer to Eleanor, taking her weathered hand in both of hers. "You gave him the most precious gift possible, your love and devotion for all those years. That's something that can never be taken away from him." "I just worry," Eleanor whispered, "about what will happen when I'm gone. He has no other family, no one who truly understands him the way I do. The care here is excellent, but—" She couldn't finish the sentence, but everyone understood. The fear of leaving Jamie alone in the world was consuming her remaining years. William knelt beside Eleanor's chair, his voice gentle but firm. "Eleanor, I want you to listen to me very carefully. Jamie will never be alone. After today, after meeting him and seeing the remarkable person you've raised, I promise you that our family will ensure he's looked after, not just financially but personally. He's part of our story now." The weight of this promise was enormous, and Eleanor stared at William with disbelief. "You don't understand what you're saying. He'll need care for the rest of his life." "We understand exactly what we're saying," Kate added softly. "Some connections transcend circumstances, Eleanor. Today has shown us that Jamie has something precious to offer the world, and we want to make sure the world continues to benefit from his presence." Jamie, who had been listening quietly, suddenly stood up and walked to a large window overlooking the facility's garden. "Can I show you my special place?" he asked. "It's where I go to think about Mummy and talk to her." Without waiting for an answer, he headed toward the garden doors. William, Kate, and Eleanor followed, along with the discreet care staff who were documenting this extraordinary day. The garden was modest but beautifully maintained, with winding paths through flower beds and several quiet seating areas. Jamie led them to a small bench positioned beneath a flowering cherry tree, where he had clearly spent many contemplative hours. "I sit here every day when the weather is nice," he explained, settling onto the bench. "I tell Mummy about my day, and about the things I've learned about the royal family. I think she would have liked you both very much." Kate sat beside him on the bench while William remained standing, his hand resting protectively on Jamie's shoulder. Eleanor settled on a nearby chair, marveling at how natural and comfortable the interaction had become. "I'm sure she would have," Kate replied. "Mothers want their children to be happy and to have people in their lives who care about them. Your Mummy would be so proud of the man you've become, Jamie." Jamie was quiet for a moment, contemplating something serious. When he spoke, his words were thoughtful and profound. "Grandma Eleanor says that sometimes people think I don't understand things because of how my brain works differently. But I understand important things. I understand that you didn't have to come here today. But you did because you have kind hearts. I understand that this makes Grandma Eleanor happy, and that makes me happy too." The simplicity and wisdom of his observation left everyone speechless for a moment. Here was someone who, despite cognitive challenges, grasped the essence of human kindness with perfect clarity. William crouched down in front of the bench, looking directly into Jamie's eyes. "Jamie, I want to ask you something. How would you feel about staying in touch with us, not just today, but regularly? Would you like that?" Jamie's face transformed with excitement and disbelief. "Really? You would want to be friends with me?" "We would be honored to be your friends," Kate said firmly. "Good friends check on each other, share news, and make sure everyone is okay. That's what we'd like to do with you." Eleanor covered her face with her hands, overcome with emotion. The impossible dream she had written about in her letter was not only coming true but expanding beyond anything she had dared to hope. Jamie suddenly stood up and ran to a nearby flower bed, carefully picking a small bouquet of daffodils. He returned and presented them to Kate with the formality of a royal presentation. "These are for you to remember today," he said seriously. "And to remember that Jamie Matthews thinks you and Prince William are the kindest people in the whole world." Kate accepted the flowers with tears streaming down her face, understanding that this simple gesture represented something far more valuable than any state gift she had ever received. These flowers came from a pure heart, given freely and with complete sincerity. As the afternoon began to fade toward evening, everyone realized that this extraordinary day was drawing to a close. But nobody wanted to say goodbye, because they all understood that something magical and life-changing had occurred in these simple hours spent together. The golden hour light filtered through the garden as the afternoon began to wind down, casting everything in a warm, almost magical glow. Jamie sat contentedly between William and Kate on the bench, chatting animatedly about his dreams and plans, while Eleanor watched from her chair with a peace she hadn't felt in years. "I have an idea," Jamie announced suddenly, his face lighting up with inspiration. "Would you like to meet my friends? They would be so excited to know that real royals visited our home." William and Kate exchanged glances, both thinking of their tight security schedule and the complexity of expanding the visit. But looking at Jamie's hopeful expression, they found themselves nodding before they had fully considered the implications. "We would love to meet your friends, Jamie," Kate said warmly. "Are they here now?" Jamie jumped up with excitement and led them back into the facility, where several other residents were engaged in their evening activities. His enthusiasm was infectious as he approached each person, introducing William and Kate as if they were beloved family members. He was proud to show off. "Everyone, these are my special friends I told you about," he announced to the common room. "This is Prince William and Princess Catherine, and they came to visit me." The reaction was immediate and heartwarming. Some residents were amazed. Others, Confused, but all were touched by Jamie's obvious joy and the genuine warmth that William and Kate showed to each person they met. Margaret, an elderly woman with dementia who usually remained withdrawn, suddenly perked up when Kate sat beside her. "You're very beautiful, dear," she said with clarity. "Are you here for the tea party?" "I would love to have tea with you," Kate replied gently, and Margaret's face broke into a smile that the staff said they hadn't seen in months. Thomas, a middle-aged man with cerebral palsy, was initially shy but warmed up when William asked about the chess game he was playing. "I'm not very good," Thomas said apologetically, but William insisted on learning the rules from him, praising his strategic thinking and asking genuine questions about his technique. Each interaction was brief but meaningful, and the care staff watched in amazement as residents who usually struggled with social situations blossomed under the attention of these unexpected visitors. More importantly, they saw how William and Kate approached each person with the same dignity and interest they would show to world leaders or heads of state. Jamie beamed with pride as he watched his friends interact with his royal visitors. For someone who often felt different and misunderstood, seeing his heroes treat his community with such respect and kindness was profoundly validating. As they made their way back to the main sitting area, Eleanor pulled Kate aside. "I need to thank you," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Not just for coming today, but for how you've been with Jamie. You see him as he really is, not as someone to pity or to manage, but as a person with value and wisdom." Kate felt her eyes fill with tears again. "Eleanor, meeting Jamie has been a gift to us. He's shown us what pure goodness looks like, and honestly, we're the ones who should be thanking you for raising such an extraordinary person." Meanwhile, William was having a similar conversation with Jamie, who had grown more serious as the afternoon progressed. "Prince William," Jamie said thoughtfully, "can I ask you something important?" "Of course, Jamie, you can ask me anything." Jamie hesitated, then spoke with the directness that characterized all his communication. "Do you think my mummy would be proud of me? Even though I live here now and need people to help me with things?" William felt his heart break at the question. He knelt down in front of Jamie, taking his hands gently. "Jamie, listen to me very carefully. Your mother would be incredibly proud of you. She would be proud of how kind you are to your friends, how you remember important things about people you care about, how you bring joy to everyone around you. Those are the most important things a person can do in life." Jamie's eyes filled with tears, but they were tears of relief and happiness rather than sadness. "Thank you for saying that. Sometimes I worry that I'm not the son she wanted me to grow up to be." "You are exactly the son she wanted you to be," William said firmly. "And I know that because I'm a father too, and all any parent wants is for their child to be happy and kind and loved. You are all of those things." As the visit drew to a close, there was one more surprise in store. Kate had been carrying a small wrapped package throughout the afternoon, waiting for the right moment to present it. "Jamie, we have one more gift for you," she said, handing him the carefully wrapped box. "This one is very special." Inside was a mobile phone, specifically designed for individuals with cognitive challenges, but with one very special feature. It had direct contact information for both William and Kate, along with instructions for the care staff on how to facilitate regular communication. "This means you can call us," William explained. "Not every day, but regularly. And we can call you too to check how you're doing and to share news about our family." Jamie stared at the phone in amazement, then looked up at Eleanor to make sure he was understanding correctly. When she nodded through her tears, he carefully hugged the phone to his chest. "I can really call the prince and princess whenever I need to?" "Whenever you need to," Kate confirmed. "And Jamie, we meant what we said about being friends. Friends look out for each other, and that's what we're going to do." The formal goodbye was emotional for everyone involved. Jamie hugged both William and Kate with the fierce affection of someone who rarely had the opportunity to form new friendships. Eleanor wept openly as she thanked them repeatedly, still hardly believing that this day had actually happened. As William and Kate prepared to leave, Jamie had one final request. "Can we take a picture together, so I can remember this day forever?" The photo that was taken in those final moments would become one of the most treasured images in Jamie's collection. It showed 4 people whose lives had been changed by an afternoon of simple human connection. The elderly grandmother whose impossible dream had come true, the young man whose pure heart had touched royalty, and the prince and princess who had discovered that their most meaningful royal duty had nothing to do with crowns or ceremonies. As their car pulled away from the facility, both William and Kate were quiet, processing the emotional intensity of the afternoon. Finally, Kate spoke. "We're going to keep our promises to them, aren't we? All of them." William reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Every single one. This is what our roles are really about. Not the parades or the state dinners, but moments like this." Behind them, Jamie stood at the window, waving until their car disappeared from sight. His new phone clutched carefully in his other hand and a smile on his face that would last for days. 3 months after that transformative afternoon at the Sunrise Care community, the ripple effects of William and Kate's visit continued to spread in ways none of them had anticipated. The story had remained completely private, known only to those who had been present, but the impact on everyone involved had been profound and lasting. Jamie's life had changed dramatically, though in the most wonderful ways possible. True to their promise, William and Kate maintained regular contact through phone calls and messages. Every Sunday evening at precisely 6 o'clock, Jamie would receive a call from either William or Kate, and sometimes both together. These conversations had become the highlight of his week, something he looked forward to with the same excitement most people reserved for holidays. During these calls, Jamie would share news about his daily activities, his progress in physiotherapy, new friends he had made, and books he was reading. In return, William and Kate would tell him carefully chosen stories about their children, their official duties, and family moments that Jamie treasured. They had even sent him photographs of George, Charlotte, and Louis that weren't available to the public, making Jamie feel like a true family friend. The care facility staff marveled at the transformation in Jamie's confidence and social engagement. Margaret Chen noted in her reports that Jamie had become a leader among the residents, helping newcomers adjust and sharing his newfound sense of self-worth with others who struggled with feelings of isolation or abandonment. Eleanor's health had actually improved since the royal visit. The peace of mind that came from knowing Jamie had genuine friends who cared about his future had lifted a burden she had carried for years. She still visited Jamie twice a week, but now their time together was filled with joy rather than worry. They would often look through the photo album that now included pictures from that special afternoon, and Eleanor would watch Jamie's face light up as he recounted every detail of his friendship with the royal couple. More importantly, Eleanor had stopped staying awake at night worrying about Jamie's future. The promise William had made that day, that Jamie would never be alone, had been reinforced through actions. A discreet trust fund had been established to ensure Jamie's care would continue at the highest level for the rest of his life, and legal arrangements had been made for ongoing oversight by people who understood his specific needs. But perhaps the most significant change had come in how the story was beginning to carefully emerge into public awareness. Not through media leaks or palace announcements, but through the organic way that acts of genuine goodness eventually find their way into the light. It started when Dr. Rebecca Walsh, a specialist in cognitive disabilities who consulted at the care facility, mentioned the extraordinary visit during a conference presentation about the importance of treating individuals with special needs as whole people, rather than collections of symptoms. She spoke about witnessing a perfect example of human dignity in action, without initially mentioning names. The story gained traction when Margaret Chen wrote an article for a professional care management journal about the transformative power of meaningful social connections for residents in long-term care facilities. Again, she protected the privacy of those involved while describing the profound impact of unexpected visitors who treated our residents like beloved family members. Eventually, a local newspaper reporter who had been investigating positive stories in the community pieced together enough information to approach Kensington Palace for comment. Rather than the usual no-comment response, the palace confirmed that William and Kate had indeed made a private visit to the care facility and maintained ongoing friendships with residents there. The public response was immediate and overwhelming. Rather than treating it as another royal photo opportunity, people seemed to understand that this was something different, a genuine human connection that transcended titles and protocols. Social media filled with stories from others who worked with or cared for individuals with special needs, sharing their own experiences and praising the royal couple for bringing attention to this often overlooked community. Jamie found himself at the center of positive attention that he handled with characteristic grace and wisdom. When a television crew was finally allowed to interview him, with careful preparation and support, his natural warmth and sincerity touched viewers across the nation. They didn't come because they had to, Jamie explained to the interviewer with his typical directness. They came because they wanted to be my friends. That's the most special thing anyone has ever done for me besides what Grandma Eleanor has done my whole life. The interview showed Jamie in his element, surrounded by his royal memorabilia, wearing the Princess Diana pin that William had given him, and speaking with genuine affection about his weekly phone calls with the prince and princess. But what moved viewers most was his obvious contentment and the dignity with which he carried himself. Eleanor, now something of a celebrity herself at 93, appeared alongside Jamie in the interview. When asked what the royal visit had meant to her, she spoke with the wisdom of someone who had lived through nearly a century of human experience. "They gave me something I thought was impossible," she said simply. "They gave me peace about leaving this world, knowing that Jamie will be surrounded by love and care. But more than that, they showed Jamie, and everyone watching, that every person has value, regardless of their challenges." The story culminated when William and Kate made a second visit to the care facility, this time with George, Charlotte, and Louis. The sight of Jamie teaching the young princes and princess about puzzles and sharing his extensive royal knowledge created some of the most heartwarming images the royal family had ever produced. During this visit, something remarkable happened. Prince George, who was 10 years old and usually reserved in public settings, connected immediately with Jamie. They spent an hour working together on a complex puzzle, while Jamie patiently explained his techniques and strategies. When it came time to leave, George asked his parents if Jamie could visit them at home sometime. "Jamie is really smart," George told his parents seriously. "And he's kind. I think he would like our garden, and he could teach me more about puzzles." The simplicity and sincerity of this request from a future king about someone's society often overlooks highlighted everything that was beautiful about this unlikely friendship. As the second visit concluded and the royal family prepared to leave, Jamie presented them with a gift he had been working on for weeks, a hand-drawn family tree showing both families connected together, with careful attention to every detail and relationship. At the bottom, in his careful handwriting, were the words, "Friends are the family we choose for ourselves." Standing outside the care facility as the royal family departed, Jamie waved goodbye with the same enthusiasm he had shown months earlier, but now with the confidence of someone who knew that these farewells were not endings, but simply pauses in an ongoing relationship. Eleanor, watching from beside him, felt a completion she had never expected to experience. The impossible letter she had written in desperation had led to something far more beautiful than she could have imagined. Not just a visit from celebrities, but the creation of genuine, lasting friendships that had enriched everyone involved. As the cars disappeared into the distance, Jamie turned to his grandmother with the wisdom that had always surprised and delighted everyone who knew him. "Grandma Eleanor," he said thoughtfully, "I think this is what happiness looks like when it becomes real instead of just something you dream about." Eleanor hugged her grandson, understanding that in seeking to give him a single magical moment, she had actually helped create something much more precious, a story of human connection that would continue to inspire and touch lives for years to come. The sun was setting over the care facility, casting the same golden light that had blessed their first afternoon together, and Jamie Matthews walked back inside to share the day's adventures with his friends, his heart full of joy and his future bright with the promise of continuing friendship.